If you have yet to experience the glory of Texas Roadhouse, there are a few things you should know before going. From knowing all about the free food you can expect to their special birthday celebrations, be prepared for the best steakhouse meal you've had in a long time. There is so much meat served at Texas Roadhouse that every location has their own butcher who cuts steaks by hand. And hand-cut, never-frozen steaks are always going to be better than the alternative. Every restaurant has a giant meat cooler too, where the meat is kept at a temperature of 34 degrees. They serve everything from ribeyes to fillets to prime rib and New York strips, along with a ton of other meaty dishes. So you know you're getting the real fresh deal.
Chops. Wasted meat's a crime. Or it should be.
Okay then.
One Redditor, who says they work in meat prep for Texas Roadhouse, had this to say about the quality of the meat. "I don't buy it, so I can't say as to the cost, but the quality of it is good. The steaks would be the highest grade. Then the leftovers from them are used for the kebabs and dillo bites. So it may not be the best meat ever, but it is good." Texas Roadhouse spends over $1 billion on meat annually, and the restaurants serve USDA choice, which means the meat has been graded by the USDA, and are cuts of meat described like this: high quality but has less marbling than prime. Choice roasts and steaks from the loin and rib will be very tender, juicy, and flavorful, and are suited for dry heat cooking.
Roaring fires, malt beer, red meat off the bone.
Not too bad, right? Texas Roadhouse also says their beef suppliers are leaders in sustainable beef production practices, which means that the delicious steak you order has to come from a cow that was raised responsibly. According to Beef, It's What's for Dinner, sustainable beef balances efficient production with environmental, social, and economic impacts. Consumers can do their part in helping with sustainability too, they explain. Even though beef only makes up 20% of wasted food, if that were, quote, cut in half, the sustainability of the whole industry could be improved by 10%. That just means you need to be sure and eat the leftover steak you bring home from Texas Roadhouse, if there is any. And that, well, that's unlikely. In addition to hand-cutting steaks and making those yummy rolls from scratch, Texas Roadhouse also makes all their side items, salad dressing, and even croutons in-house. This matters because a lot of large chain restaurants don't bother with cooking their food from scratch, as Money Inc. explains. In most cases, when a restaurant chain grows as large as this one has, they take shortcuts in preparing meals that feature some prepackaged or frozen ingredients that are microwaved or heated in some other way and served. But creating food from scratch is part of the recipe for Texas Roadhouse's success. And according to FSR Magazine, Travis Doster, the company's senior director of communications, has said, "If you think about it, Kent Taylor, the founder of Texas Roadhouse, wanted to serve food he was proud of. Well, the men and women running our restaurants, they have that same mentality. And being proud of the food you serve your customers is probably difficult when all you're doing is dumping some frozen vegetables on a plate and sticking them in the microwave. Thank goodness Texas Roadhouse doesn't do it that way." If you're looking for a place to have a quiet night out, you might want to go somewhere else, because Texas Roadhouse is a rowdy, loud, fun place. And they like it that way. According to founder Kent Taylor, the restaurant was built on a foundation of fun. He said, "If your employees are having fun, they are going to have fun with the guests. Employees have been known to line dance, even if it is against the law." Say what? Servers at a Wichita location line danced every hour on the hour, even though it was technically illegal, thanks to an obscure city ordinance that said a restaurant that served alcohol couldn't also allow dancing without a permit.
And there was a time for this law, but not anymore. See, this is our time to dance.
Thank goodness they finally had the permit approved. If you're celebrating your birthday at Texas Roadhouse, you don't just get the standard birthday song. You get the birthday song sung to you while under a spotlight. After that, servers bring out a saddled sawhorse for the diner to sit on, while other customers are encouraged to yell yee-haw at them. Sound like your kind of birthday celebration? In addition to the buckets of peanuts in the waiting area and at your table, you also get free rolls before your meal even arrives. Delicious, warm, baked in-house rolls. They come out of the oven every 5 minutes, and fortunately, they are more than happy to bring you extra. Even better than the bread is the homemade cinnamon butter served along with it. It's a big perk, and people are obsessed with these rolls. How obsessed? One Twitter user said, "When I die, bury me with Texas Roadhouse rolls." Another lamented, "I cried last night because we accidentally left our rolls at Texas Roadhouse." But probably the best advice of all was uttered by the Twitter user who said, "Get you a man that chooses Texas Roadhouse rolls over Red Lobster biscuits." You can afford to have a favorite item at Texas Roadhouse because chances are it will still be on the menu 20 years from now. Texas Roadhouse knows what works for them and their customers. And they don't go around chasing the latest fad or changing things up on their menu according to trends or whatever molecular salad smoke with the hot chocolate blood orange infusion is all the rage these days. When FSR magazine asked company exec Travis Doster about the last time they changed the menu, he said, "We added a steakhouse filet salad. That was one of the more recent ones. That's been 4 or 5 years." It's not like a salad is some sort of wacky trend that would shock customers. There's something reassuring about knowing your favorite restaurant is still going to serve your favorite meal, and that you don't have to worry about it being discontinued. Go ahead, get attached to something. It's all right.
I think I'll just,
You know, I've been working here for 44 years. Ain't nobody ever ordered nothing but T-bone steak and a baked potato.
Texas Roadhouse is the sort of place your kids will feel right at home in, and that goes for any night of the week. And if you're a parent, that's a big deal. It doesn't matter if they make a mess, because the floor is already littered with peanut shells. And the company's senior investor relations director had this to say when it comes to why this place is so great for families. "We play really loud music, so we're not going to hear your kids screaming. It's just a comfortable place for families to go when they feel they can take their kids and they're going to be okay. I don't have to worry about them crying or screaming. It's really a nice, comfortable place." Anyone who has ever dined with a cranky toddler or a teething baby can appreciate that. It's the sort of restaurant without quiet piano music and stuffy waiters and white linen tablecloths. It's the sort of place where if your kid spills a drink, you won't feel like crawling under the table.
I want hepatitis!
Coming your way, buddy.
Texas Roadhouse always has a number of specialty cocktails on the menu, including tempting concoctions like the Jamaican Cowboy, made with rum, peach schnapps, orange and pineapple juice, and a cocktail made in honor of country singer Kenny Chesney, made with coconut rum, peach schnapps, lemonade, sweet and sour, and blue curacao. They also serve classic mixed drinks and wine, so you can certainly get in the celebratory spirit. What we're saying is, there's something for everyone on this cocktail menu. But while their mixed drinks and margaritas are delicious, some of them aren't the healthiest choices. And Eat This, Not That cautions against ordering the frozen raspberry margarita. Why? It'll set you back almost 500 calories. And it's loaded with 83 grams of sugar, way more than you should be eating in an entire day. There's good news though. You can partake of the original margarita on the rocks and drink a much more manageable 170 calories and 14 grams of sugar. Or, you could order another basket of rolls with cinnamon butter and down a few more frozen raspberry margaritas. Because you're a grown-up and you do what you want. If cocktails aren't your thing, you can also order a beer from the drinks menu and know that you're in for a treat. That's because Texas Roadhouse takes the temperature of their draft beers very seriously. Money Inc. explains, the Texas Roadhouse restaurant chain takes extra measures to ensure that each draft beer that they serve their customers has been chilled to a specific temperature. The staff is very particular about the following rules to ensure perfection. The beer is kept at a chilly temperature of 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And beer is pretty much the perfect thing to drink with a steak. No, really, it's science. Steak is a natural fit with beer because the carbonation acts as a palate cleanser, and the bitterness takes away some of the fatty mouthfeel of your favorite cut of beef. That means you aren't just drinking beer with your meal because it's 5 o'clock somewhere and your kids are yelling and you finish binge watching your favorite series on Netflix again, and the guilt is setting in. You're doing it because you're a gourmand and all fancy-like, and you know it's going to enhance the flavor of your meal. Eating out is expensive, especially if you are a family with some adults in the household who enjoy an adult beverage or two with their meal. One of the reasons Texas Roadhouse is so successful, averaging about 300,000 meals per day, is because they know their customers so well. Business Insider notes that plenty of Yelpers mention the chain's, quote, flawless execution of basic American food. People go to Texas Roadhouse because the food is reasonably priced and good quality. They can bring their kids there, they don't have to dress up, and they can relax. Those are all important, but there's even more to appreciate about the restaurant chain, especially if you like supporting businesses that are about more than just the food. They are regularly voted among the best in customer satisfaction. They are big on charitable giving. Their restaurants average 4 fundraisers a month for local nonprofits and schools. They are supportive of first responders and the military, even saying thank you with free meals for the troops on Veterans Day. And they're supporters of the Special Olympics. That's a lot, right? It's this sort of commitment to their customers and to the community that makes this place a lot more than just steaks and big margaritas. Plus, those rolls. If you love Texas Roadhouse but don't always have the time to sit down to a full meal there, you'll definitely want to know the fast casual chain called Bubba's 33. Also founded by Kent Taylor, the menu features items like burgers, wings, and pizzas, all made from scratch just like Texas Roadhouse. This restaurant also wants to be a destination for everybody, so they have a garage bar area along with a family dining section, so those without screaming kids can instead scream at big screen TVs while their favorite teams play. They claim to be a place for all things American: food, family, sports, and beer. Sounds like an excellent place to take the family and/or an excellent place to go hide from your family.
Ever gone to Texas Roadhouse and found yourself wondering what to order? Is the sirloin worth it? Is the prime rib up to snuff? This rundown of the very best Roadhouse cuts will help you make up your mind in no time.
Well, I could use a steak.
We're not totally sure where the name choice came from, but it might have something to do with how the dish looks after the steak has been piled with sautéed onions, sautéed mushrooms, and jack cheese. It's not a bad menu item by any means, but that being said, this is probably our least favorite steak option at Texas Roadhouse. That's not because the flavor is bad, but because it feels like you're eating a burger, not steak. If we're looking for an authentic steak experience, we're not going to choose the chopped version. That being said, if you're looking for a good meat dish for a great price, you'll be happy with Roadkill. We have no major complaints about this cut of meat, and it comes at a reasonable price. This dish is the most economical way to get an authentic steak experience. However, with so many other juicy steaks on the menu, the problem here is that this option is rather lackluster. It's perfectly acceptable, but it's not the best. One TripAdvisor review from a repeat customer summed it up like this: "I think I have tried everything on the menu and it would be hard to pick a favorite, but my least favorite would probably be the sirloin, but that's because the sirloin is just not the best cut of meat." Prime rib is a beautiful cut of meat that is known for being juicy, tender, and indulgent. While Texas Roadhouse offers a tasty prime rib at a decent price, it's still just acceptable. Reviews are somewhat inconsistent. While some customers seem to love this dish, others find it disappointing. It's often described as being overcooked by the time it comes to the table, with some customers finding some parts of their single slice of meat too tough, while other parts were perfectly tender. And any good restaurant knows consistency is key. The Fort Worth ribeye is similar to a bone-in ribeye, but without the, well, bone. This does give the steak less flavor than the bone-in version, but it's still a great cut of meat that customers love. With marbling throughout the steak, the Fort Worth ribeye is certain to make your mouth water. It's great on its own, but is equally tasty when paired with some steak sauce. If you enjoy a good ribeye but don't like dealing with the bone, this is an excellent option. It also comes with 2 side options, like most dishes at Texas Roadhouse, and you can't go wrong with any of them. It's not uncommon for smaller cuts of meat to be overcooked and tough, but that's not the case with Texas Roadhouse's filet medallions. This dish comes with 3 3-ounce fillets that are each cooked to perfection, just how you like it. They're also served on top of deliciously seasoned rice, which is only offered with a couple of the steak dishes. What are the downsides to this meal? You only get 9 ounces of steak total without the option to increase your portion size. A lot of that plate space is taken up by the seasoned rice, but this is a great dish for people who aren't huge carnivores and want a little more to their meal. Similar to the filet medallions, you might expect a kebab to be tough and overcooked. If we were at a family barbecue, we might agree with you, but kebabs are done differently at Texas Roadhouse. This steak is marinated and cooked to your desired temperature, giving it an ideal flavor and texture. It's also served with onions, mushrooms, tomatoes, red pepper, and green peppers. If you want a variety of flavors and textures in your steak dinner, this is a great option to choose. However, our beef with this one is similar to what we found with the filet medallions, and that's simply that you're looking at less meat than a standard cut of steak. A New York strip is super tender and flavorful. Fans consistently rave about Texas Roadhouse's take on this classic, which comes in an 8-ounce thick cut or 12-ounce traditional cut. Countless reviews use terms like excellent, perfection, and superb, and that's what you want to hear about your steak. The New York strip tastes similar to the sirloin but offers more tenderness and flavor. Consider it a tastier and slightly more expensive upgrade. Everything goes well with a strip steak, so choose whatever looks good to you on the menu. The only downside to this cut of meat is that it isn't as tender as some of the remaining cuts. If you don't mind a little chew, this is a great pick. The Porterhouse T-Bone is a delightfully juicy piece of meat that will impress everyone around you. With so much flavor and meat packed into this dish, you might be wondering why it isn't ranked as our #1 option. This really comes down to the bone inside, which causes a couple of potential issues. Having a large bone stuck in the middle of your steak requires a bit more maneuvering with your steak knife than a boneless option, and we're out to dinner to relax, right? The bone also makes it a little trickier to create an even cook throughout the steak, so you may find yourself enjoying medium-rare bites alongside well-done bites. Still, it's a fantastic item that's definitely worth ordering, and then going back to order again.
You know what? I am going to have that third steak after all. Go ahead and put that order in now, please and thank you.
This dish is similar in many ways to the Fort Worth ribeye, except for one key element. The bone-in ribeye keeps the rib bone attached to the meat while it's cooked. While this does create the potential for some uneven cooking, it adds so much additional flavor that is 100% worth it. This menu item comes in a hefty 20-ounce portion and can be cooked to your liking, and many reviewers suggest Texas Roadhouse has top-notch prep. One TripAdvisor review even said, "Bone-in ribeye steak was great and delicious as what I had in New York City. Tender, juicy, packed with flavor, and comes with 2 delicious sides. You really can't go wrong with this menu item." It loses out to our #1 pick, but just barely. This steak is by far the best thing you'll find on the menu in this restaurant, which is saying a lot. It's unbelievably tender and packed with authentic flavor. It's also seasoned well without overpowering the meaty flavor you look for in any steak dish. Although it's one of the most expensive cuts of meat per ounce, you're still getting a great deal for the quality of the dish. Paired with 2 sides, you've got yourself a fabulous meal that will hold its own against fancier restaurants. Trust us, this is one of the best steaks you'll eat without spending a fortune, and it'll definitely have you saying,
Get in my belly!
Texas Roadhouse has gone from one original location to the largest steakhouse chain in the country. How did this restaurant pull off such an impressive transformation? It's quite the story, and maybe not the one you'd expect. Here is what you didn't know about Texas Roadhouse. You'd be forgiven for assuming that Texas Roadhouse's story began in the Lone Star State. It is in the restaurant's name, after all. But the chain actually got its start hundreds of miles away in Indiana. In 1993, founder Kent Taylor opened the doors of the first Texas Roadhouse in Clarksville, Indiana, a city located on the Ohio River just across from Louisville, Kentucky. In fact, to this day, the company's headquarters are based in Louisville. But according to Funding Universe, neither Texas nor Indiana was Taylor's original culinary inspiration. The avid skier loved the mountains of Colorado, where he lived for many years. After moving to Indiana, where he managed several casual and fast food restaurants, Taylor decided to try his hand at operating his own eatery.
So I figured I better work for myself or I'm going to get fired several more times, I guess.
Naturally, he opted for a Colorado theme. In 1991, with the financial backing of former Kentucky Governor John Y. Brown, Taylor opened Buckhead Hickory Grill, today known as Buckhead Mountain Grill in Louisville.
And personally, I'd swim across the river for these steaks.
When the business proved to be an immediate hit, the pair hatched plans for a second location, this time in Clarksville, but couldn't agree on how to divide the profits. Still wanting to open a restaurant in Indiana, Taylor found new investors, but the Colorado theme belonged to Buckhead. Thus, Texas Roadhouse was born. In 1994, Taylor sold his interest in Buckhead and never looked back. After he graduated from the University of North Carolina, Texas Roadhouse founder Kent Taylor moved to Colorado, where the self-proclaimed ski addict could carve up the mountainside anytime he wished. It wasn't until he relocated to Indiana that he opened up his steakhouse chain. But why did the avid skier relocate to the Midwest in the first place? In what would ultimately prove to be serendipitous, it was a series of personal setbacks that led Taylor to move back not just to his hometown, but to his parents' house. Taylor and his wife divorced in 1990, leaving him to raise his 2 young daughters alone. Soon he found himself so financially burdened that he was forced to move back in with his mom and dad, according to Investors Business Daily. This wasn't the worst thing, however. Taylor admitted to Investors Business Daily, "My mom sure helped me with my kids when I was first starting the company." It proved to be a big help, as Taylor, despite these significant personal and financial setbacks, was able to open the first Texas Roadhouse in 1993, not too long after moving to Indiana. Taylor told Investors Business Daily, "Things worked out. I like to fill my mind with positive thoughts. I've always been very persistent and prove the naysayers wrong." Texas Roadhouse has come a long way from its humble beginnings as a single restaurant in Indiana, and its sustainability didn't look too promising when several of its first expansion locations were forced to close, notes Funding Universe. Needless to say, it didn't appear as though Texas Roadhouse would become the largest steakhouse chain in the country, and yet that's precisely what happened. According to Restaurant Business, the company brought in just over $3 million in revenue in 2019, the most of any steakhouse chain in the United States. That's roughly $400,000 more than its closest competitor, Outback Steakhouse, which had 724 locations, compared to Texas Roadhouse's 553. And Texas Roadhouse's success doesn't appear to be slowing down. Aside from a drop in revenue in 2020, which was an industry-wide trend primarily caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the restaurant chain has seen a significant jump in sales each year since 2017. The first thing any guest notices upon sitting down to eat at Texas Roadhouse is the complimentary bowl of shelled peanuts on the table. In fact, the chain may be better known for their peanuts than their steaks. Travis Doster, Texas Roadhouse's Senior Director of Public and Government Relations, told the National Peanut Board, "We're known for what we call legendary food, legendary service, but you will always hear people say, 'Oh, the peanut place.'" The company has become so famous for its salty snack, in fact, that it now sells bags of them at sports stadiums across the country. Texas Roadhouse takes its peanuts and freshly baked bread, which is also complimentary, pretty seriously. That's because the restaurant sees them not as just a pre-meal snack, but symbolic of the great value customers get when they dine there. Therefore, the chain invests heavily in these treats. Doster claimed that across all its locations, Texas Roadhouse spends more than $20 million on peanuts and bread, which includes purchasing more than 10 million pounds of peanuts. Texas Roadhouse founder Kent Taylor met the icon known as Willie Nelson at a Farm Aid benefit concert. According to Texas Roadhouse, the two became fast friends and bonded throughout the years over more than a few poker games. They were such good friends, in fact, that Taylor decided to incorporate the country music legend into his business. What's a Texas-themed restaurant without some Willie Nelson influence anyhow?
If it doesn't say Texas, it's not Texas Roadhouse.
Although each Texas Roadhouse location's interior decoration is primarily dedicated to representing the local community, every restaurant across the country has one corner dedicated to Willie Nelson, aptly known as Willie's Corner. It naturally features photos and memorabilia of the legendary country crooner. The restaurant sometimes also distributes Willie braids to its employees and guests, consisting of a bandana and two pigtail-style braids that mimic Nelson's signature hairstyle. And like a true friend, Texas Roadhouse always has Nelson's back. When a stuffed armadillo that tours with Nelson was stolen, Louisville Business First reported that the restaurant chain was on the case, offering $1,000 gift cards for any information on the whereabouts of Old Dillo, as the armadillo was called. According to USA Today, the armadillo was eventually returned to Nelson unharmed. If you wake up in the morning with a hankering for some Texas Roadhouse ribeye, Porterhouse cheeseburgers, rolls and cinnamon butter, or all of the above, you're going to have to muster up some patience. The steakhouse chain abides by a dinner-only philosophy. This means that it's only open for lunch on the weekends. Why does Texas Roadhouse forego the potential revenue lunch? There are a few reasons, starting with the well-being of its employees. According to the company's fact sheet, the restaurant is closed for lunch during the week to help its employees, particularly managers, maintain a healthy work-life balance. Not only does this improve the work situation for Texas Roadhouse employees, but it also makes them better at their job, according to founder Kent Taylor. Taylor told Forbes, "You have better execution when you're focused on 2 shifts. Most chains only do 30% of business at lunch. I get my A-team working for dinner. I like that." Only serving dinner also helps Texas Roadhouse save money on real estate costs. Most people eat lunch during the week close to where they work, which is often in a high-traffic area. But owning or renting a property in these areas costs far more than in less densely populated locations. By not having to focus on the lunch crowd, Texas Roadhouse can set up shop just off the beaten path, where the cost of owning real estate can be significantly lower. Texas Roadhouse may not have begun in the Lone Star State, but it sure has adopted its culture. That includes, of all things, line dancing. Members of the service staff at Texas Roadhouse restaurants are often known to line dance throughout their shift. To be more precise, they dance along to one song every hour, according to the restaurant's Twitter, so you're bound to catch at least one performance during your meal. It has become such a tradition at Texas Roadhouse that the company has gone as far as hosting line dancing competitions with the staff of different restaurants across the country going head-to-head. Few industries, if any, were hit harder by the COVID-19 pandemic than the restaurant industry. But while some restaurants have been forced to close, others have fared better. On the top of that list is Texas Roadhouse. According to the marketing agency TOP, Texas Roadhouse was the most popular casual dining chain in the country during the one-year period from July 2019 to July 2020. The steakhouse restaurant was the most visited casual dining destination in 15 different states, from Arizona and Colorado to Massachusetts and Maine. It was also among the top 5 such eateries in 18 other states. Texas Roadhouse's success can be attributed to its rapid business model transition, according to FSR. The restaurant was quick to switch to a curbside and drive-through operation, equipped all employees with gloves and masks, and even set up double drive-through tents. The results were downright staggering. FSR reported that in January 2020, Texas Roadhouse's to-go business was bringing in roughly $8,400 per week at each location. By the end of April, that number skyrocketed 575%, to $56,000. Kent Taylor said on a conference call back in May 2020, "Make no mistake, Texas Roadhouse is open for business." Fans of Texas Roadhouse will be happy to know that it's not the only place they can get the franchise's level of quality and service. In fact, the company owns 2 other restaurant chains. In 2013, founder Kent Taylor opened the first Bubba's 33 in Fayetteville, North Carolina. The sports bar-themed eatery was named after Taylor, whose nickname was Bubba, with a nod toward the end of Prohibition in 1933. Following many of Texas Roadhouse's successful steps, like being closed for lunch on most days and keeping prices down, the brand quickly found success. The chain now has 34 locations across the country, with more on the way. When asked by Forbes why people would choose Bubba's 33 over its competitors, Taylor said simply, "It's about the food and people. Number one, our wait staff handles 3 or 4 tables where they have 5 or 6. I do scratch-based food and they don't. If people eat my food, it's not easily compared." 2 years after Bubba's 33 arrived, Taylor had yet another restaurant idea. This time it was focused on perfecting the staples of chicken, burgers, and salads, or as Taylor described the theme to the Louisville Business Journal, "What if Chick-fil-A and Five Guys got married and had a kid?" Unlike its sister chains, Jaggers is a fast food restaurant and is still in its infancy. There are just 3 locations, 2 in Indiana and 1 in Kentucky. It has not all been good news for Texas Roadhouse, as the chain suffered a devastating loss in the early part of 2021. In March, the company announced founder and CEO Kent Taylor had died. Louisville television station WDRB reported that his family revealed Taylor had taken his own life. The family said in a statement, "We are saddened by the decision Kent felt he needed to make and want to emphasize more than ever the importance of reaching out for help if you or someone you love is suffering." What led a successful man to end his life at the age of 65? Sometime prior to his death, Taylor was diagnosed with COVID-19. One of the lingering effects of Taylor's experience with the disease was a severe and persistent ringing in his ear, known as tinnitus. The discomfort became so unbearable that Taylor's family said it contributed to his suicide. The family's statement said, "Kent battled and fought hard like the former track champion that he was, but the suffering that greatly intensified in recent days became unbearable." Although in extreme distress, Taylor managed to make one more significant philanthropic contribution before he died. According to his family, he committed to fund a clinical study to help members of the military also suffering from tinnitus. If you or anyone you know is having suicidal thoughts, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. 8255.
There are a lot of things to love about Texas Roadhouse, including the baskets of fresh baked rolls, which are pretty much everyone's favorite thing. However, according to the confessions of many unhappy diners and some employees, there are a few items on the menu you should avoid at all costs. One of the first things you'll come across when browsing the menu at Texas Roadhouse is the Cactus Blossom appetizer. The restaurant describes it as a Texas-sized onion, golden fried, and served with Cajun horseradish sauce for dipping. However, some customers would describe it more as a greasy mess. One diner on Yelp called it disappointing, saying her cactus blossom was soggy and stuck together in huge clumps. Another diner lamented on Facebook that their cactus blossom was greasy and cold. The cactus blossom also happens to be one of the most unhealthy items on the menu at Texas Roadhouse. Including the dipping sauce, the fried appetizer contains nearly 2,000 calories. That's most of your recommended calories for the entire day, according to the FDA. Not to mention, it boasts 115 grams of fat and more than 5,600 milligrams of sodium. Your arteries have been warned. Texas Roadhouse serves up steak in all kinds of ways, but that doesn't necessarily mean they should. Some diners are not happy with the restaurant's chicken fried steak entree. Texas Roadhouse calls their take on this classic Southern recipe the country fried sirloin and describes it as hand-battered, fresh-cut sirloin served crispy and golden, topped with made-from-scratch cream gravy. While that sounds like it could be delicious, many say this dish does not live up to the expectation. A diner on Yelp described the entree as barely edible, calling it nothing but a chewy mess, adding that the grease was old and the gravy tasted horrible. When you think of Texan cuisine, barbecue ribs probably aren't too far down on the list of things that come to mind. So you'd think this menu item would be a highlight at Texas Roadhouse. But according to some very unsatisfied customers, that's simply not the case. The restaurant calls their ribs award-winning and slow-cooked with a unique blend of seasonings and our signature barbecue sauce. But according to an Iowa diner on TripAdvisor, the sauce itself was just average and the ribs were very fatty. Another diner from Oklahoma City describes the ribs as burnt and overcooked and inedible. And a Michigan diner called them terrible, saying quite bluntly, if you want ribs, do not eat here. If that's not enough, it's also worth noting that a full slab of ribs will cost you a whopping 1,450 calories and more than 100 grams of fat. If you're really looking to destroy your diet, look no further than Texas Roadhouse's bread pudding. It's only available at select restaurants, and it is likely the single most unhealthy item that Texas Roadhouse makes. Bread pudding is a classic Southern staple, and Texas Roadhouse's version is made from the restaurant's famous rolls and drizzled with honey caramel sauce. Unfortunately, that small plate of sweet, sticky goodness comes out to 1,740 calories. You're also looking at a startling 240 grams of sugar. To put that in perspective, the American Heart Association recommends men have no more than 36 grams of sugar per day, and women have no more than 25 grams. Texas Roadhouse is known for hand-cut steaks. The restaurant boasts that its butchers hand-cut every steak that is served and end up chopping an average of $1 million worth of meat annually at each location. However, not all cuts of beef are created equal, and this holds true at Texas Roadhouse. The restaurant's 20-ounce bone-in ribeye is one that you might want to avoid. It's one of the most unhealthy steaks on the menu, coming in at 1,480 calories and more than 100 grams of fat. And even if you're not watching your waistline, you still might be in for disappointment. Texas Roadhouse claims that its ribeye is juicy, flavorful, and served on the bone for extra flavor. But not everyone agrees. One diner from Louisiana said in a TripAdvisor review that the ribeye tasted like it must have come from a very old cow, saying it was tough and not very tasty either. If you were looking for the best, freshest steak you can get at Texas Roadhouse, then whatever you do, don't order the Porterhouse T-Bone. It may be described as a 23-ounce Texas-sized USDA choice steak, but even the employees will tell you stay away from this one. In fact, a California diner said in a Yelp review that when they tried to order the Porterhouse at Texas Roadhouse, the waiter kept pushing for them to order a ribeye instead. That can't be a good sign, but it turns out there's a reason for it. Texas Roadhouse claims that its butchers hand-cut every single steak that's served up at its restaurants. However, according to the confessions of some employees, this may not actually be true. Some Texas Roadhouse servers admitted on Reddit that the chain's Porterhouse T-Bone steak is oftentimes not hand-cut in-house, but is rather shipped to the restaurants frozen.
So, now it's all starting to ooze out. It's very interesting, isn't it, Katie?
Yeah, very.
Texas Roadhouse may be known for their beef, but it seems the burgers leave something to be desired. A customer in Connecticut declared in a TripAdvisor review that they will never have a hamburger at Texas Roadhouse again, after being served what they described as two very well-done hockey pucks seasoned with way too much salt. Another diner in New York called it the worst hamburger they had ever had. Other reviews of the burgers at Texas Roadhouse call them bland, unflavored, and overcooked. Bottom line, if you're in the mood for a good burger, there are plenty of other options out there other than Texas Roadhouse. Getting the chance to have a prime rib can feel like a cause for celebration, but the prime rib at Texas Roadhouse is anything but impressive, according to many unhappy diners.
Hey, Julie, want this extra piece of prime rib?
Several reviews from TripAdvisor paint a grim picture. One review called the prime rib disappointing, adding, "Imagine chewing on your shoe, tough and full of fat. Not exactly appetizing, but just wait, it gets worse." Several other customers from restaurants around the country expressed their displeasure with the prime rib, with one reviewer on TripAdvisor saying they took one bite and gagged. The meat was rancid, absolutely disgusting. And yet another diner in Maryland ventured to order the prime rib, but took one bite and spit it out. One of the most notable snacks at Texas Roadhouse isn't even on the menu. Part of the chain's long-standing casual vibe is the barrels and buckets of peanuts sitting around the restaurants, free for anyone to dig into. Unfortunately, it's for that reason that many say you should avoid those peanuts at all costs. A Texas Roadhouse employee on Reddit warned that the peanuts are a hub for germs, pointing out how many people rummage through the peanut containers every day without washing their hands. Another server commented that peanuts that are left on tables often just get put right back in the barrels, so you never know what you're going to find. One customer in Chicago wrote on TripAdvisor that they were munching on some peanuts while waiting to be seated and found a half-eaten lollipop stick with a peanut shell stuck to it.
Are you craving some Texas Roadhouse steak but not in the mood to go out? There may be a solution that doesn't involve to-go containers. Keep watching to find out. Steak is perhaps one of the riskiest things to order at a restaurant. You worry that it could be too fatty, it won't be cooked the way you like, or it will be too dry. The list goes on. Many restaurants have stepped up their game to try and be America's #1 steakhouse, but only one turns up the Texas to 11. Texas Roadhouse, of course.
When I'm hungry for the great steak of Texas, I always go to the Texas Roadhouse.
Decorated to conjure up all things Texas, Texas Roadhouse is known for its buttery golden brown rolls paired with a cup of cinnamon honey butter and a big tin pail of peanuts at every table. Texas Roadhouse aims to bring a little bit of country to all of its locations. Past the free birthday appetizers, saddle ride, and blaring country music, however, it all comes down to how well they can cook a steak. Can those cowboys in the kitchen cook a mean head of steer, or are their steaks as dry and as tough as a sun-beaten saddle? Texas Roadhouse claims that they take their meat seriously, having served USDA choice steaks at their restaurants since first opening in 1993. So what sort of steaks can you get at Texas Roadhouse? The smallest is the humble 6-ounce steak, while the heftiest is the truly filling 23-ounce steak. Selections include the Dallas Filet, the marbled Fort Worth ribeye, or the roadkill steak that is smothered in mushrooms, onions, and jack cheese. The price for your Texas Roadhouse dinner will vary from place to place, although the difference in cost is relatively minimal. For example, Menu and Prices places the Fort Worth ribeye in the price range of $19.99 to $22.99 based on the size of the steak ordered, while Top Restaurant Prices places the same order in the price range of $15.99 for a 10-ounce cut to $20.99 for a 16-ounce piece. While not an enormous difference, it's safe to say you probably won't be paying an arm and a leg for your steak dinner. If you want to enjoy a steak on a budget, it's suggested you try the roadkill steak, which costs around $8.99 to $10.99. While it may not be dirt cheap, you'll still have plenty of free bread and peanuts to help you break even on your steak dinner. Since Texas Roadhouse is all over the country, surely it must mean they're doing something good, right? In a June 2019 review, Irene Jung of Business Insider wrote, "I just ate at Texas Roadhouse for the first time and it lived up to the hype." Jung praised her waitress's warm and friendly hospitality, her rattlesnake bites appetizers, and most importantly, her steak. A bone-in ribeye cooked medium rare and served alongside a fully loaded baked potato and vegetables. Jung wrote, "The ribeye looked gorgeous, it oozed fat, and it was encrusted in a crisscross layer of crisp black char." Posters on Reddit were a little less positive of the Roadhouse, however. One user wrote, "Texas Roadhouse is to steakhouses what Olive Garden is to Italian food. Not the best, not the worst, but it's okay in all respects." Obviously, you could get a Texas Roadhouse steak at any one of the chain's restaurants. It's as easy as sitting down, looking over the menu, and saying how you would like your steak cooked. But what if you could eat those legendary cuts of beef anywhere, like in your home? Fortunately for you, Texas Roadhouse has the answer: the Texas Roadhouse Butcher Shop. Proudly offering USDA choice quality steaks hand-trimmed and aged to perfection, the Texas Roadhouse Butcher Shop offers everything from 8 to 12-count packages of filet mignon medallions to a 4-pack of 20-ounce bone-in ribeye for shipping right to your door. The Butcher Shop even offers cooking tips for how to best prepare your freshly arrived steak on everything from your grill to your stovetop. Why start a butcher shop? The answer, per the shop's frequently asked questions, is simple. The company wants to provide their customers the same value and delicious steaks they always enjoyed, so why not deliver those two things right to their doorstep? This isn't the first time Texas Roadhouse has shown its charitable side either. From March 18, 2020 to January 2021, CEO W. Kent Taylor gave up his salary and bonus to help pay frontline workers during the COVID-19 pandemic.
A meal at Texas Roadhouse wouldn't be complete without the right sides, so here are the carbs, veggies, and everything else you need to look out for. Hot buttered corn is so simple, yet so satisfying. Alas, it's also very easy to mess up. Unfortunately, Texas Roadhouse's buttered corn is more messed up than satisfying. One of our biggest issues here is the texture. The corn is so overcooked to the point that it feels like just the kernel skins. Thus, they're decidedly not very plump, which is one of the most enjoyable parts about eating fresh corn. Furthermore, it's more oily than it is buttery, so you're not getting as much of the buttered flavor on the back end. Mashed potatoes are another one of those sides that feels so right when served next to a steak. We're sure that's what Texas Roadhouse had in mind when they considered offering these thick and fluffy mashers. Sadly, though, they're underwhelming, but not for the reasons you might think. While these mashed potatoes can be ordered in various ways, we're focusing on the one with beef gravy on top because it seems like the most obvious choice to pair with a good steak. Alas, the beef gravy just isn't very good. It's overly savory, almost artificially so, and has a weird aftertaste we just couldn't put our finger on. On the plus side, the mashed potatoes are actually very good. They're creamy, fluffy, and feature chunks of thick potato skin throughout, lending them a rustic flavor and texture. So if you go for the potatoes, skip the beef gravy. And if you don't want to eat them plain, there are much better ways to dress them up.
Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
Applesauce can be prepared in a number of ways, and some of them are quite disappointing. From a visual standpoint, Texas Roadhouse's version doesn't look very exciting, and the flavor is just as bland. It's not that it tastes bad per se, it's got the right amount of sweetness, and there's nothing offensive about it, making it a solid choice for picky kids. But there's nothing to write home about here, and it's certainly no different than a jar of applesauce that you could just as easily gobble up at home. Our recommendation to Texas Roadhouse is to get a little more creative here. Use real apples for chunky homemade vibes, or at least add a dash of cinnamon to spice things up a bit. The mac and cheese at Texas Roadhouse isn't the homemade version that's stuffed with all kinds of yummy cheeses and creams. Instead, it's just the boxed variety that you can find at a grocery store for $1 or $2. Still, if you're a blue box macaroni fan, you likely won't be disappointed with this rendition of a nostalgic childhood favorite. For one thing, the texture is creamy and velvety. Plus, it doesn't have the bells and whistles of extra seasoning, which makes it easier for kids to stomach while also setting the stage for the cheese to shine. It really doesn't need anything extra, not even salt or pepper. A hearty sweet potato filled with caramel sauce and toasted marshmallows sounds heavenly in theory, but in practice, not so much. One problem with this loaded tuber is that it's just too sweet. Of course, sweet potatoes already have a naturally sweet flavor, and it doesn't take much to amp them up. Adding marshmallows and caramel is just a little too overwhelming. Also, the charred marshmallow is a little too charred, leaving an unappetizing and bitter burnt aftertaste. When it comes to sweet potatoes, sometimes less is more. Maybe just a smear of cinnamon butter topped with gently roasted marshmallows would fare better. It might not sound as enticing as caramel sauce, but we truly believe it would be tastier. Texas Roadhouse's sautéed mushrooms are a total flavor roller coaster, and that's an experience we won't soon forget. Let's start with the positive, namely a firm and meaty texture with the perfect amount of tender juiciness. But alas, the negatives are too much to ignore. Once again, Texas Roadhouse gets it wrong with the umami flavor. It simply comes off too strong. Plus, with a mix of very potent black pepper, it tastes like a beef bouillon and peppercorn explosion happened in the kitchen, and not in a good way. We'll call this a split decision. If you're feeling lucky, you can try it yourself, and maybe you'll have a different opinion.
You got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Green beans might seem like a boring pairing with steak, but Texas Roadhouse proves that perception wrong. These aren't your average frozen green beans that have been heated and tossed in a bit of butter. At first glance, you'll notice that they have a brown tinge and seem to be swimming in a brown broth. There are also finely diced onions and a hearty sprinkle of bacon. That can all mean only one thing. We've got ourselves some Southern-style green beans. Although these green beans taste almost as good as Grandma's, they still don't quite make the top of the heap. There's a certain artificial beefiness that might be a bit too strong, depending on your palate. Still, they're good enough to be worth a recommendation, especially if you love smoky green beans cooked in bacon. Sautéed onions are undoubtedly meant to be paired with mushrooms and a beefy slab of steak, but even on their own, they're not too bad. Unlike the mushrooms, there aren't any weird flavor vibes here. The onions are perfectly cooked, not too firm and not completely mushy. They seem to be tossed in soy or beef broth, and they also seem to feature black pepper and a bit of flavoring to up the ante. Overall, this is an enjoyable bite that should be a show-stopping topper on a juicy steak. Order a side of all these onions and give it a go. A hearty steak fry is naturally the perfect accompaniment to steak, as well as burgers and other savory entrees. The best steak fries are hot, crispy, and salted, and Texas Roadhouse fares pretty well in this area. Simply put, these steak fries are undeniably delicious. They come nice and hot, featuring fluffy potatoes inside with a perfectly browned outside. They can be enjoyed with or without ketchup because they're just that good. One thing we really appreciate about these fries is their simplicity. Though some restaurants like to jazz up seemingly plain options with special seasoning, these fries arrive simply salted, just like a good steakhouse fry should be. You might encounter some charred ends, but you can just eat around them and toss the blackened butts to the side. Steamed broccoli isn't exactly the most exciting side dish, but it definitely serves its purpose, especially if your goal is to eat light. Though the presentation isn't much, there are some nuanced flavors here that surprised our palates. Rather than a floppy, bland floret, these are nicely formed broccoli pieces with an interesting flavor profile. Texas Roadhouse's website notes a lemon pepper butter on the broccoli. We didn't detect a citrusy flavor, though. Instead, it came across as something more like soy and garlic. Overall, this broccoli is a winner, and not as drab as you might expect. There are a number of ways to prepare chili, and depending on where you're from, you may very well have your own specific, deeply held preferences. Perhaps you like it with a hint of sweetness, and while that's not the case with Texas Roadhouse's chili, it's definitely not gross either. Topped with shredded cheddar cheese and a sprinkling of potent red diced onion, the flavor here is top-notch. It's got a strong chili taste with little to no heat, while the spices and the toppings work just right to keep both your tongue and stomach happy. It also comes with a pack of crackers so that you can dip or break them over the top of your bowl, just like you would at home. It's like ordering a warm bowl of comfort, so get ready to dig in. There's something about Caesar salads that's just so mundane. Perhaps it's the lack of toppings or the lackluster dressing. Whatever the reason, they're usually not on the A-team of salads. Despite all that, Texas Roadhouse's Caesar salad is done remarkably well. Everything from the crispy and flavorful croutons to the dreamily thick and creamy dressing left us salivating and gulping down each bite. Yes, it really is that good. This seems to be the trend with Texas Roadhouse salads in general. So try it for yourself and see what we mean. We promise you won't regret it. How good could a simple house salad really be? Texas Roadhouse is here to answer our skepticism. For one thing, this unassuming house salad features loads of toppings. While other restaurants might only offer a smattering of lettuce with a sprinkle of cheese and tomatoes, Texas Roadhouse kicks things up a notch. They dress their crispy lettuce and greens in thick shredded cheddar, with the crispiest, crunchiest, most flavorful croutons you could ever imagine. That's all before topping it with vibrant diced tomatoes and a heaping helping of hard-boiled eggs. Texas Roadhouse offers multiple delicious dressing options. We recommend the French. Ultimately, the flavors all come together for one mouth-watering salad that tastes almost as good as the entrees.
2 salads.
There isn't usually a lot to say about rice. In most cases, rice is just rice, but Texas Roadhouse's seasoned rice really did a number on our taste buds in the best way possible. We're not sure what kind of culinary magic was performed here, but the flavor really stands out. It seemed like it was doused in all the deliciousness typical of a seasoned roasted chicken, with flavors like butter, parsley, chicken broth, and garlic all dancing merrily on the tongue. Like many of the other side dishes, Texas Roadhouse doesn't provide much insight into the ingredients used here. Still, we give this rice 2 hefty thumbs up for its outstanding flavor. In case you haven't heard, Texas Roadhouse offers some of the best baked bread out there. Served as individual dinner rolls presented in a basket, these warm and fluffy buns really whet your appetite and tantalize your taste buds.
I love bread.
Before biting into one of these, you should be sure to add a giant glob of cinnamon butter ahead of time to get the full effect. The result is a mouthful of goodness with a perfectly balanced flavor that's subtle, sweet, and buttery enough to make you go wild. They're so good, in fact, that you'll really have to practice some self-control to keep your stomach empty enough for the main course. So if you love a good dinner roll, get ready to be wowed, but make sure you set a limit ahead of time. We've finally made it to the most delicious, most show-stopping side dish available on the Texas Roadhouse menu, and it is the loaded baked potato. Many of us have surely enjoyed some tasty loaded baked potatoes before, but they don't usually leap up to the top of the side dish heap immediately upon biting into them. To start, everything comes served on top of a fluffy and perfectly cooked warm potato. This already impressive foundation is stacked with butter, sour cream, cheddar, and bacon. The cheddar cheese shreds are thick and noticeable, almost as if they have been shredded fresh with a hand grater. The flavor of the cheese is undeniably sharp, leaving an intense burst that really envelops and lingers on your taste buds. But now let's get to the best part about this loaded potato, and that's the bacon. Simply put, this bacon is absolutely amazing. The flavor is dynamically smoky, and the texture is spot on. It's perfectly thick and chewy, and chances are you'll be eating most or all of this potato before even getting to any of the other sides. Quite frankly, if you went to Texas Roadhouse only for the loaded baked potato, we wouldn't blame you.
Line dancing at the drop of a hat, saddling up on your birthday, and covering everything with cheese and bacon. Here are some of the really weird rules Texas Roadhouse employees have to follow. If you have 2 left feet, working at Texas Roadhouse may not be the best choice for you. That's because line dancing will likely be a requirement of your job. Fortunately, according to Indeed, line dancing isn't a standard Texas Roadhouse employee rule in every location. Users on Reddit have commented that new hires will get to take line dancing classes, and that if line dancing is a part of the requirement at your location, you can expect to have to dance at least once an hour.
We have a certain song that comes on, kind of lets them know we're getting ready to do a line dance, and they'll go up front and do a quick little line dance for 3 minutes.
However, if you try to avoid the line dance, you can expect to be written up for not making the effort. One Redditor said their best friend was even forced to come into work to line dance on her day off because they needed a certain number of dancers. Since she was a newbie, she got drafted. Restaurant lunch menus tend to offer smaller, more reasonable portions for less money, so eating off the lunch menu can be good for both your pocketbook and your waistline. However, Texas Roadhouse doesn't serve lunch during the week, and when they're open during lunch hours on the weekends, there's no lunch menu. Texas Roadhouse says that this helps their managers not have to work as many hours, and also saves on real estate costs since they don't have to be located in high-traffic areas to lure in the business crowd. With lower real estate prices, Texas Roadhouse doesn't really have to worry about being open all the time. Plus, Texas Roadhouse has over 5,000 guests each week, which is more than most restaurants. With everyone buying more expensive dinner menu items anytime the doors are open, Texas Roadhouse is able to make more money. One big Texas Roadhouse employee rule is that it requires its host to act with heart, an acronym standing for, quote, howdy, engage, arrive, respond, and thank you. That is, they must use a friendly and energetic initial greeting, engage guests in friendly conversation, tell the guests what they need to know about the restaurant on the way to the table while acting with every courtesy, and thank them for visiting when they leave. Not only do servers have to hit certain talking points at your table, but they have very specific words that they have to use. This employee rule is part psychology and part branding. As a user revealed on Reddit, pay attention and you'll realize that food and drinks at Texas Roadhouse come with specific adjectives. For example, beers, margaritas, and steaks become, quote, ice-cold beers, legendary margaritas, and hand-cut steaks. The script and specific buzzwords are all a part of Texas Roadhouse's mission to provide legendary food and legendary service. In fact, 100% of Texas Roadhouse employee respondents on Comparably said that this mission statement is a motivating factor for them, and 17% said that it's the main reason they continue to work for the company. Within 2 minutes of being seated, Texas Roadhouse servers should start suggesting drinks and appetizers. They must recommend at least one alcoholic and one non-alcoholic beverage. They're also required to suggest at least 2 desserts. Being suggestive isn't abnormal in the restaurant business, but Roadhouse employees are pushed to upsell. A Redditor explained that the idea behind the Texas Roadhouse employee rule of upselling is to use psychology and sales techniques to get customers to buy bigger items or items at premium prices. If a customer asks for fries or a baked potato, the server will ask if they like to add ingredients like cheese, bacon, or butter.
Our potatoes are as loaded as the folks at a Willie Nelson concert.
It's the same case for entrees, except that it's mushrooms and onions as the add-ons. Unfortunately, according to Reddit, some upsells can be a little misleading since employees aren't automatically telling their customers that the extra ingredients don't come with the dish and cost extra. Texas Roadhouse has several rules about what you can and can't wear to work. It's a casual Texas steakhouse-style environment, so jeans are actually part of the uniform. You just have to be sure they don't have any rips and tears, and Texas Roadhouse will provide you with branded t-shirts during your training. However, according to Indeed, if you're thinking of working at Texas Roadhouse, you'll want to know that it's necessary to keep your shirt tucked into your jeans at all times, unless management is feeling a little lax. Plus, you have to wear a belt. A 2015 Fruit of the Loom survey determined that men of all ages who tuck in their shirts make more money than non-shirt tuckers. And Today reports that shirt tuckers also tend to have more job happiness and optimism for the future. It also makes it easier to keep your shirt clean while waiting tables. So there is a good chance that having servers with a more polished look helps make more money for the restaurant and helps maintain happier employees. Thus, this weird Texas Roadhouse employee rule is likely here to stay. If you hate being humiliated, don't let your friends and family convince you to go to Texas Roadhouse for your birthday. Otherwise, the server will drag out a portable saddle for you to mount, announce your birthday to the entire restaurant, and will ask everyone within hearing distance to give you a big, quote, yeehaw.
Ready, 1, 2, 3.
Some servers do ask elderly people if they're up for the saddle, in case mounting it may prove too difficult physically. Nevertheless, they still get a big old Texas-style yeehaw. Redditors with Roadhouse experience revealed that servers don't necessarily enjoy the birthday saddle process. It can sometimes be difficult to gather enough servers for the festivities, and find someone who wants to make the loud birthday announcement in an already loud restaurant. Texas Roadhouse regularly sends in secret shoppers to ensure that servers are doing everything they're supposed to do. According to one Reddit user with inside knowledge, the mystery shopper will look like a regular customer, so every table the waitstaff serves between 4 p.m. and an hour before closing is suspect. The Redditor explained that the secret shopper is required to stay at the restaurant for a minimum of 60 minutes to have plenty of time to observe any missteps the server might make. They will have already reviewed information from the previous mystery shopper, so they likely have something specific that they're observing, and they're always watching to see who is and who isn't line dancing. According to a different Reddit user, if a server doesn't pass their test, they can be demoted to being a host or fired, revealing, as long as you hit certain talking points, greet them at the 45-second mark, and make sure their food comes out okay, you should be good. According to past and present Roadhouse employees on Reddit, there is an expectation for servers to sell gift cards. The potential for people to buy gift cards and never use them is always a bonus for a restaurant. It's money in the bank for a restaurant without necessarily having to perform a service or sell food. Total Touch says that 8 out of 10 people will purchase more than one gift card at a time, which can be a real moneymaker. Another interesting statistic is that 44% of consumers have visited a new restaurant or store because they've gotten a gift card. So it can be a way to get people in the door who have never had the Texas Roadhouse experience before. Unfortunately, one Redditor says that the Texas Roadhouse employee rule to sell gift cards can sometimes backfire. They've experienced customers who, offended by the hard sell, decided not to leave a tip. It turns out that Texas Roadhouse keeps track of all those upsells and gift card sales. According to one Redditor, at night's end, a server can expect the management to announce everyone's percentages from the shift, and that nightly contests are common to see who can get the best percentages. Prizes can range from not having to do certain duties or getting a free meal. According to Restaurant News, the point of employee competition is to increase how much the restaurant sells and increase morale among servers. Competition and the possibility of getting a reward encourage many servers to be on point, which is why many managers host nightly competitions. According to responses on Glassdoor, while some employees have found the contest to be fun because of the competition aspect, others seem to resent the idea of working harder for a free salad. Rather than having bread baked and steaks cut off-site and shipped to the restaurant ready to serve, Texas Roadhouse employs bakers and meat cutters. The bakers bake fresh yeast rolls every day and bake fresh bread every 5 minutes to serve with homemade cinnamon butter.
It's a staple for Texas Roadhouse.
This is going to be the cheesiest thing I've ever said, but I swear we make them with love.
While the bakers are staying warm and toasty in the kitchen though, the meat cutters work in coolers with a temperature of 34 degrees Fahrenheit. According to the Kansas Department of Agriculture Meat and Poultry Inspection, processing and cutting meat should always take place in an environment that is not above 50 degrees Fahrenheit to prevent bacteria and mold from growing on the meat. With kitchen restaurants being a warm environment, this means that cutting work has to be done in a separate cool room. However, it's usually more convenient to do the cutting work in the cooler, which is what meat cutters at Texas Roadhouse are required to do. Despite the sometimes frigid work environment, about 65% of Texas Roadhouse meat cutters on Indeed rated the job 4 to 5 stars. One said it was his first job, and he spent 8 years doing it. Unfortunately, meat cutters never make as much as servers have the potential to make. There are plenty of restaurants that require their long-haired waitstaff to pull their hair back in a ponytail. After all, no customer wants someone else's hair in their food. However, Texas Roadhouse has a more unusual employee hair policy, with the restaurant forbidding employees' hair from touching their shoulders. In addition to this rule, posts from Indeed reveal that both male and female employees are required to keep their hair a natural hair color. Of course, in the kitchen, food safety policies dictate that staff must wear hats, hair coverings, hair and beard restraints, or clothing that covers up any excess body hair. Otherwise, Citizen Times reports that they're in danger of being written up during health inspections. One thing you need to know about general managers at Texas Roadhouse is that they're literally invested in how well their restaurant runs. So they want to ensure that every customer who walks through the door leaves happy. When a member of the Texas Roadhouse staff gets promoted to general manager, they are required to make a $25,000 investment in the company. If you're wondering how that would be possible for someone working on waitress wages, it's because the company will actually loan the money to the manager to be paid back in installments. And if the general manager sticks around for 5 years, they can get the whole loan forgiven. Thus, according to Harvard Business School, the Texas Roadhouse employee rule to invest in the company as a manager is not as extreme as it initially sounds. Harvard Business School also says that a Texas Roadhouse manager tends to make around $100,000 a year, since competing restaurants only offer their general managers around $65,000 to $80,000 per year. There is definitely an incentive to stay on for 5 years or even longer. Plus, Texas Roadhouse says that the managing partner gets 10% of the profits, which drives them to have the staff follow all the scripts, use all the buzzwords, and upsell. All of these weird rules that Texas Roadhouse employees follow are ultimately about putting more money in the pocket of the management and the company.
With the slogan, "Legendary Food, Legendary Service," Texas Roadhouse is all about delivering top-notch dishes at attractive price points. But did you ever wonder just how they managed to serve so much for so little? We did too, and here's what we found out about everything from menus to footfalls. To say that Texas Roadhouse is hugely popular is an understatement. With close to 600 locations across the world, each serving around 5,000 guests per week, Texas Roadhouse is a steakhouse powerhouse. In fact, the chain serves a whopping 300,000 meals per day, which is a lot even for a franchise. That said, it's little surprise that the Texas Roadhouse butchers cut around $1 million worth of meat per store annually. While the numbers stand testament to the restaurant's popularity and no doubt keep the chain's prices down, the chain's popularity has its downsides. At dinner hours, guests can expect a 15 to 45 minute wait. Luckily, the restaurant's call-ahead seating service can cut this waiting time. Motivated employees are a huge part of making it in the restaurant business, and this includes restaurant managers whose enthusiasm can inspire those working below them. To increase personal involvement and turnover, Texas Roadhouse offers its managers a long-term reward scheme. Texas Roadhouse describes it, in exchange for 10% of the profits, managing partners are required to put down a $25,000 deposit and sign a 5-year employment contract. And the scheme appears to be paying off. With a direct interest in boosting profitability, outlet managers are frequently seen approaching tables to ensure that diners are having the best possible experience. This high level of personalized service can go a long way to increasing customer loyalty.
I have taken a picture of every steak I've ever eaten there.
Around 70% of Texas Roadhouse guests are repeat customers, and that's impressive. With the restaurants making more money, so are the managers. According to Investors Business Daily, over time, many have earned between $100,000 to $200,000 due to these personal investments. Texas Roadhouse has managed to stay ahead of the chain steakhouse pack by utilizing a model that attracts customers who are looking for a great deal, then asking them if they would like to add high-profit items like drinks and appetizers. According to a review by one employee, the company's upselling strategy is an important part of the work culture. As servers, we play games almost every shift and compete with each other to see who can upsell certain items. Winner gets cool prizes. It's not all roses and butterflies, however. Some employees and customers haven't been quite as excited about the restaurant's upselling strategy. One employee complained on Reddit that the Texas Roadhouse management bases employee value on how much they can upsell and runs stats on these for every server every night. Some customers have also expressed annoyance with the steakhouse's upselling tactics. A TripAdvisor reviewer has described the chain's upselling as, quote, shady after a server upsold her unsuspecting 82-year-old mother-in-law with a margarita kicker, or more specifically, an extra shot of tequila in a test tube. While the Texas Roadhouse menu has been designed with a wide range of tastes in mind, it rarely changes, and it doesn't really have to. According to Texas Roadhouse representatives, the steakhouse offers different choices within menu categories that fulfill each patron's expectations and budget. This win-win formula not only lowers the costs associated with introducing new menu items, but keeps recipe consistency across outlets to ensure that guests always get the dishes they know and love. Let's take the chain's #1 selling item, the 6-ounce sirloin. That's been served at the restaurant since its opening some 30 years ago. Menu changes are only ever made with consideration of customer feedback and operational and economic consequences. And for every new item added to the menu, one is removed to enable the chain to maintain its high standards of service and food quality.
Wow, first try, every time. Thumb sucking good.
Just like other chain restaurants, Texas Roadhouse's hourly wages leave much to be desired. Hostesses and hosts at the restaurant earn between $2 and $12 an hour, with the average wage clocking in at $8.52 per hour. To make matters worse, hostesses and hosts generally don't make tips. This is low, even when compared to the average hourly wage in the fast food industry, which is $9.36 an hour. Looking at this another way, if a Texas Roadhouse server works 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, their annual salary will stand at $19,568, substantially lower than the average U.S. wage of $41,950 per annum. Texas Roadhouse's payment structure has come under fire in the past. In 2016, Texas Roadhouse employees were awarded a $700,000 class action settlement. The two waitresses who initiated the action claimed that the franchise forced them to put their tips into a tip pool, which was then divided between waitstaff and employees who didn't serve customers. According to the lawsuit, this violated the minimum wage law since the waitresses were paid $2.13 an hour, well under the minimum wage of $7.25 per hour, while the restaurant claimed tip credit under federal law. Texas Roadhouse keeps its costs down by not serving lunch on weekdays. This approach keeps real estate costs down as it means that the restaurant outlets don't have to be in what are called high-traffic business districts. According to Investors Business Daily, the decision to only serve lunch on weekends hasn't hurt the steakhouse chain one bit. In 2018, Texas Roadhouse averaged $5.2 million per restaurant, while competing outlets that serve lunch averaged under $3 million per location. The no weekday lunch policy is also the chain's way of ensuring a better work-life balance for its managers and employees. This makes sense when you consider that typical restaurant managers work between 50 and a ridiculous 80 hours per week. While many franchises spread their message on the national media, Texas Roadhouse doesn't rely on paid advertising. In fact, the franchise spends very little on advertising. According to MarketWatch, the chain spends a 0.3% portion of its sales on its advertising fund. This is practically nothing compared to the restaurant's competitors, who put aside between 3 and 5% of their revenue for advertising. So how does Texas Roadhouse promote its fare? Instead of spending bundles on advertising, the franchise relies on local-level promotions and word of mouth. As former Texas Roadhouse CEO Kent Taylor explained to Investor Business Daily, our free hot bread and free peanuts are our best advertisements. A part of this strategy involves community involvement, loyalty programs, and organic promotion on social media. The fact that Texas Roadhouse is open about its mediocre desserts may come as a bitter surprise to some. After all, many of us love to linger over a cake or a pastry after a satisfying meal. Well, this is precisely what Texas Roadhouse doesn't want its guests to do. Former Texas Roadhouse CEO Kent Taylor explained the somewhat unusual strategy to Investors Business Daily. We don't want our guests to stay for dessert. We like the table turns. That kind of makes sense from a business point of view, so keep that in mind the next time you're tempted to scoff at their so-so offerings of the Big Ol' Brownie, Granny's Apple Classic, and the Strawberry Cheesecake. Since beef makes up 45% of Texas Roadhouse's offerings, this figure stands at 33% for its competitors. The franchise is hypersensitive to rising beef prices. To prevent any sudden cost increases, the restaurant has a policy of signing 24-month contracts with its beef suppliers. While long-term contracts usually translate to higher beef prices at the outset, they are a smart strategy in a climate of rising beef prices, particularly because according to ABC 7 News, beef prices increased by 20% between November 2020 and November 2021. Locking in beef prices and quantities can also help restaurants deal with any supply chain disruptions, such as those that took place in the U.S. after the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020. According to USDA, American restaurants lose $162 billion on food waste annually. And this doesn't make customers happy, with 72% of U.S. diners saying that they care about how restaurants deal with their food waste. With the motto, waste not, want not, Texas Roadhouse's commitment to minimizing wastage isn't only good for the planet, but also is a great cost-cutting measure. The philosophy is supported by the franchise's made-from-scratch model, where all of its meals, including sides and even dressings and bacon bits, are made on the premises to reduce waste. Each Texas Roadhouse outlet has its own butcher or meat cutter who hand trims each steak in a 34-degree Fahrenheit cooler. This not only ensures high-quality steaks, but it also helps prevent wasted meat. Meanwhile, the steakhouse's in-house bakers prepare the franchise's famous yeast rolls from scratch. They come out piping hot from the oven every 5 minutes. These are then served with homemade cinnamon butter right after guests are seated. Just like many other chain restaurants, Texas Roadhouse relies on attracting its guests with its main offerings, in this case steaks, and increasing revenue by selling higher margin products such as drinks. It's a pretty common way for restaurants to make money, and Texas Roadhouse has it down to a science. As such, most Texas Roadhouse restaurants boast a full bar with a wide range of bottled and draft beer, as well as big brand wines and liquors. This strategy seems to be working. According to MarketWatch, alcohol made up 10.8% of the chain's sales in the fiscal year 2021. One of the restaurant's specialties is the margarita. In fact, the chain has 15 different versions of the cocktail. The cocktails come with an upsell option, affectionately named the Kicker, which consists of tequila and triple sec.
And a Cadillac margarita?
Hey, it's 5 a.m. somewhere, right?
A.m.?
The choice of pushing their margaritas isn't an accidental one. The beverage director at Quixote in Chicago, Jay Schroeder, told El Restaurante that margaritas are the perfect cocktails when it comes to high profit margins. He explained, with the classic, you are not looking at using a lot of different expensive liqueurs or multiple pieces of produce. At its core, it is a recipe for a cost-effective cocktail, even when you are using the best expression of those ingredients. In addition, Texas Roadhouse also serves the typical range of soft drinks, which can generate a 90% profit margin. And who doesn't have a drink with their steak?
Famed Western-themed restaurant Texas Roadhouse first opened its doors to the public in 1993. Since its opening, the company has grown to more than 600 locations in 11 countries, where customers have been able to enjoy hand-cut steaks, fall-off-the-bone ribs, made-from-scratch sides, several varieties of margaritas, and more. But there's one thing that brings all of the customers back: the fresh-baked and highly irresistible rolls. Served with the delicious honey cinnamon butter, the rolls are soft, sweet, and always ready to eat as each customer makes their way to their seat. With an unlimited amount available, it's hard to resist scarfing down a whole basket or 3 before your meal arrives. Actually, they're so well loved, one Texas Roadhouse fan even got a tattoo of a basket of rolls and the sweet butter served alongside them. The restaurant serves up fresh rolls to every customer coming through and makes sure to have enough by baking them every 5 minutes.
This is our fresh baked bread. We bake it every 5 minutes.
Once baked, butter is melted over the buns and the resulting treat is sweet, doughy, and buttery, something fans of the franchise have loved. They're then served alongside the famous honey cinnamon butter as each table is seated, and as previously stated, your server is more than happy to bring you extra once your roll basket runs empty, which probably won't be long. As one Twitter user stated, "And don't let me be at Texas Roadhouse where they got the cinnamon butter to go with the rolls. I'm asking for a second basket before my meal even gets there." To make sure there is a focus on getting the rolls out fresh and delicious, each Texas Roadhouse restaurant has a baker in charge of making each yeast roll from scratch every day. Once they're finished baking, each roll is kept warm under heat lamps, so they're served just right. Obviously, not every Texas Roadhouse employee is going to love the job, but some certainly do. One Indeed user praised their job as a baker, stating, "I loved this job. I was able to bake bread and put it in baskets for servers to take to the customers. It was fast-paced during peak times, but was still really fun. I loved my coworkers. The hardest part was trying not to burn yourself." It's good to know the bakers have focus and excitement about making each and every roll in order to help make them as tasty as possible, and we thank them kindly for that. One deliciously sweet thing fans of the franchise are very grateful for is the honey cinnamon butter that helps to complete the rolls. Just like everything else on the menu at Texas Roadhouse, the honey cinnamon butter is homemade to perfection. One Reddit user revealed that the cinnamon butter's ingredients include honey and cinnamon, as well as a butter blend. In fact, Texas Roadhouse makes large amounts of the butter. Measurements the Reddit user remembers to be 40 pounds of butter, 64 ounces of honey, and 2 cups of cinnamon.
Don't forget our homemade honey cinnamon butter.
And did we mention the rolls are free for every table? Not only are they free, but as previously mentioned, they're unlimited, which makes them so much more addicting. Served alongside a bucket of peanuts, which is also free when you're first seated, you can enjoy as many rolls as you want with no cost. Who doesn't love that? With 5,000 guests served a day per restaurant, the rolls are served alongside 300,000 meals a day in total between all of the restaurants. So we know the bakers have got it down to a T when it comes to making these amazing rolls. The average Texas Roadhouse is 6,700 to 7,500 square feet and seats 291 guests. So we can only imagine how many rolls are served each hour as tables are seated. According to a post on the Willoughby, Ohio location's Facebook, they estimate 5 million rolls each week. All in all, the rolls, alongside the honey cinnamon butter at Texas Roadhouse, are a staple for the fans of the franchise, and the restaurant brand has succeeded in creating an item that so many look forward to with each visit.